Coach, thank you so very much for joining us here on the Warm Down Pool. I'm very excited to talk with you today. There's a lot I want to get into with you. You've had an amazing career with the Baylor School and the club program there, and now you're coaching the Chattanooga YMCA Metro Chattanooga Master Swim Team. Did I say that one right?
Yes, you did. YMCA. Yeah, I like our letters. So yeah,
definitely. That's a cool one. I like that. So I want to talk a lot about master swimming because that is the one area of coaching that I have never even dipped my toe into at all, other than I covered a practice twice and that's it. But I've never really gone through that process. And I want to talk to you more about the details with it and the process of working with athletes that are older. I mean, I grew up as an age group coach. Oh, yeah. I'm used to them being younger. And when they're 22, they leave me. And I have some that have done masters and have gone on and still compete. I have others that do it just because it's the only thing they've ever known to stay in shape. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Totally pumped to be here. This is going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, one of the things that we talked about off air that I really wanted to get into right off the bat, you had a unique experience that not a lot of coaches get an opportunity to work with. And that was in 2018. You were a member of the coaching staff, or you're the head coach, of the junior Pan Pac team. And the first question I have to ask on that, other than it was really cool that you get to go to Fiji, when you're the head coach, like obviously we've been head coaches of our programs, we have all total control, but now you're bringing together 18 to 20 or whatever men and women, but they're all coming from different coaches and they're all coming from different programs. How are you able to manage the training that goes on with these athletes? Because in my mind, I'm thinking you got 20 different people doing 20 different things, standing on a pool deck and all of a sudden saying, you're going to do it my way. It'd just be pure chaos. Talk to me about that experience of being a part of that in Fiji back in 2018, but also how do you manage those athletes and where they're coming from?
That's a great question. So one of my absolute favorite experiences, and I've had a million of them in this sport, but without question, one of my favorite experiences was that. And so this Fiji was the fourth time I had worked with the national junior team. And I was very glad that I'd had those prior experiences before being a head coach, because being the head coach and being the assistant coaches on those trips, very different. Your role is just very different. But like everything else in life, especially nowadays, it's more and more to be successful at it and have a successful experience for everybody. Communication. Mitch Dalton, who I worked with on that trip as the national junior team director, he had he's a great planner, and he had so many things, and I ripped all of them off, but he had so many things that, proactive beforehand to make the coaching staff at the meet, the club coaches back home, and most importantly, the athletes as comfortable as possible with this process. Basically, what was very helpful is, he'd send a pretty thorough basically just tell us about your kid, tell us about your athlete, tell us what they've been doing, tell us about them, tell us about what makes them tick. And that was so helpful. The thing that surprised me was, I don't know, it's kind of like everything else in life, although I was a bit surprised about it, is in sending these communications to the club coaches, some of them would send you back a novel and then keep editing it. And other coaches would be crickets. You wouldn't hear anything from them. They'd just gone on vacation and turned unplugged, and I'll check my email, etc. when I get back, because, it is the end of the year. And for some folks, that's the only time they get a chance to really have a vacation. And then every color of the rainbow in between. But getting as much background information on the kids beforehand was paramount.
I think that's always been one for me as a college coach, and talking with club coaches and high school coaches, is getting that background information is critical, because I'm going to be working with them potentially for 4 years, but they're still going to be involved in the process, especially during the summer, because a lot of my kids go back home. They go back and train with their club programs. And it's a little different than the Division I level, where most of those kids will stay in town and they'll stay with the Jack Bowerleys or Todd DeSorbos or Dave Durdens of the world. I don't have that luxury here. I've got 3 kids who train with me in the summer, and they're all local. So that makes that easier. So there's a little continuity, but keeping that communication with the club coaches, I can only imagine from a national level, because you're communicating via time zone. And like you said, there are going to be some coaches that are going to be uber detailed. They're going to be massively updating you like, hey, we just did this week, and this is where she's feeling or he's feeling, and they're not getting a lot of sleep right now, a little nervous, jitters. And then there's other coaches where you're just going to hear crickets the whole time. And I've had club coaches who have been that way. I had a young man that we were struggling on how to train him. He came from a program that was very high yardage, and he was a sprinter. He was used to 8,000-9,000 yards workouts. And here we were at 3,500 to 4,500, but it was all specific for speed. And I'm trying to get his club coach on the phone. I'm like, talk to me, because he just wants to fight me. And he's like, he's not getting it. He's not understanding that, yes, you have this aerobic base and we will do some things, but finally I get the coach's wife on the phone. I don't know how I got her number. And he goes, oh yeah, my husband doesn't actually have a cell phone. So, and he doesn't check email. And I go, the dude's my age. Like, technology hasn't, we're not talking to somebody who's like in his 90s or something. So I think that communication had to be critical, because you're managing so many different personalities. When you're on a trip like that and you're trying to organize and coordinate everybody, I know I have friends who have been a part of national teams before. Mike Lawrence out of Lake Forest has been the manager multiple times for multiple different teams. Keeping those kids organized, because again, they are kids and you're in a foreign country. Please tell me you didn't have a whole lot of sleepless nights, but how are you and your staff able to kind of manage those personalities and kind of keep things organized? They're obviously there to do a job. They're there to race, but I know a couple of those kids might have only had one event, maybe two. So talk to me about how managing the athletes during the experience.
That's really one of the most challenging components of that gig. To go back what we were talking about before, I'll just put a bow on it and say, having coached college for many years back in my prior coaching days, the two processes mirror each other very much. To trying to figure out what exactly you're getting here in an athlete and what makes them tick. The recruiting process, and then this taking them on a national team process. They mirror each other very much. Keeping the kids on track. Yes, it is such a wild learning experience for them. It was for me as well. I went on my first trip in 2011, and Chase Kalish and Nick Fink and Simone Manuel and Ryan Murphy. Yeah, they're all pups, right? This is I think Chase they're like 15, 16. Olivia Smoliga. The list goes on and on. Who were part of that trip. We went to Lima, Peru, and it's so awesome. I can't stress enough how good a job Mitch does well, he did. He's at Texas now. But he did such a great job of really trying to think about every scenario without overthinking it, if that makes sense. He really did a great job of trying to get to understand the kids and know what makes them tick and this and that. And quite frankly, like, I love the experience of being an assistant coach, because basically we divide the team up, and certain assistants were in charge of certain kids, and you basically kind of kept your eye on them. I think it was, so in 2017 in Indy, I believe it was Mike Prado who was dealing with a very young Carson Foster at the time, and it was his first trip. I'm pretty sure it was the 200 back, and that wasn't until very late in the program, in the meet. But luckily, you've got a coach in Mike who's been there, done that a million times, and he's such an awesome, engaging guy anyway. And Carson's home coach Ken, who's going to be the head coach this year, did an awesome job, of really communicating workouts, etc., what to do each day leading up to that. And Carson had a great swim. And those meets are long. They're like 11 days. You're there for 2 weeks. They're very long. Everything is very different. So there's a lot of teaching to the athletes, especially their first go around. I remember, it was nice to have in 2017, we had people like Reese Whitley, Craig Freeman, even Michael Andrew, who had been through these things a million times. and we told the other kids to lean on them and get their viewpoint on their past experiences, etc. I mean, it's kind of no different than you would probably do with, you have a freshman going to their first high school state meet, senior, buddy up with him and keep an eye on them. They're a freshman going to their first NC2As, follow the people who've been there, who finaled, and, this is kind of old hat for them. So, but it's just the trickier thing is you're just not as familiar with the kids, but you are around each other enough that the good thing is, I mean, honestly, most coaches will, and I say this in the most loving terms, have no fear of talking to you about their athletes, right? They will be, getting them to do some of the written stuff, that was trickier. But if you could get the coaches on the phone, you had plenty of information on the kids usually.
Well, and that's the thing too with a lot of those coaches. I had a young lady this was my days in Decatur, Illinois, and it wasn't on an international level, but it's still a zone team level, and you get a little bit of experience. So I had one young lady who made the Illinois zone team. They had somebody drop out who was supposed to coach. I can't even remember the reason why. And apparently I'm the only guy who didn't have any plans after the season was over. So they called me to be a part of it. And just the big thing that I had to do, and again, these were 9 and 10s, 11 and 12s, 13, 14s. I was part of the 11, 12 contingent. You had all these young men and women, boys and girls, however you want to call it, they're getting to know each other in a very short amount of time. And you're taking a group that's 15, 16, up to 18, whatever. And now you're trying to get all these kids on the same page. They're getting to know one another. Especially now they're all taking their selfies and their pictures, and then you've got to do relay work. You've got to coordinate schedules and get everybody flown in so that you can fly out all together. And I think that experience from a club coach's perspective, I was always happy when I had a kid make a zone team. And I think here in the United States, we just have such a disadvantage in that I think almost every other swimming federation in the world is funded by the government, and we're self-sufficient, and they keep their national teams together. I have a girl from Colombia, two girls from Colombia. They both have been part of the national team system down there. They know all those kids. So they've been traveling forever. They know each other's strokes. They know how to do their relays. They keep in touch with one another because these countries are smaller. They can go 4.5 hours and see one another. Whereas you go 4.5 hour flight, you might be able to see somebody from California to Cincinnati or something like that. So I think it's critical that for our club coaches, they love the idea that their kids have made a national team. So they're going to be as supportive as they can, because selfishly they want to see their athletes do well, but also they're hoping someday they may get that little invite. Hey, would you like to be an assistant coach for Junior Pan Pacs or a world champ or short course worlds? I know there was a coach that I worked with here in the NAIA. She was a head coach at Brunel University. She's now at Virginia, working with Todd DeSorbo, Blair Bachman. If I'm not mistaken, Blair is going to be the women's coach for the short course world championships. And that's her first experience with this. So I think it's really cool that we were able to pull people in and work with these athletes. Go ahead.
I will freely say this. I was very glad, I think I've already said it, that I had the assistant coaching opportunities first, 3 of them, to really, really get a feel for, okay, what exactly is going on? What's the role? Because being thrown in as a head coach as a first timer, because ultimately, the decisions are on you. You can give, I was pretty, Mitch liked it because I'd be kind of blunt on stuff as an assistant coach. I'd be like, well, in 2017, I'll tell you a funny story. Bruce Gemmell was the head coach on the men's side in 2017 in Indy, and the men's, I was a male assistant coach, and we were all around, and early on he's like, okay, I want each of you to take one of the relay groups, and him and Mitch said that, and really, really focus on it, right? Really put your time and effort and your energy into that relay group. Okay, great. And it's going around, and he and Mitch are picking people, and the whole time, it's the first year of the mixed relays. And
wow.
I'm just going like, no mixed relay, please, no mixed relay. And Dan, how about you take the mixed relays? I'm like, perfect, awesome, yes. I'm like, dang it, because then I had to, but it was cool because it opened up a whole new world of working with a different component of the U.S. swimming staff that had the all the breakdown and all the numbers and all the stats on the possible combinations that other countries would be using and this and that. I don't know. It's kind of, whereas I don't like to try new things traditionally, but usually once I try, I'm like, oh, this is really cool, actually. So that was one of those things, getting to get nerdy and knee deep in the weeds with the stats and everything relative to setting up those relays.
I know. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
Just wanted to jump in there with the mixed relays. The data and the analytics that go behind it make Moneyball look simplified. I'm fascinated. I've heard coaches talk about it on the club level. We don't have that here at collegiately. We do it in our inter squad meets at the beginning of the year just for fun. And
sure, yeah.
Of course, the swimmers ask me, the first question is, well, coach, how should we do this? And I got no answers for them. Like, this is not my area of expertise. I'm like, I front load the heck out of it. And if it was a 200 free relay, both guys are leading off, and then the ladies are anchoring for us. That's my strategy. Sure enough, all 6 relays in our inter squad meet were 2 guys front, 2 girls going third, fourth. And I'm just sitting there going, you guys have no creativity whatsoever. And they said, coach, we just went with you. And I went, that's not always the good plan. But I think the fact that you've got people on staff who are breaking that stuff down and looking at the analytics and looking against your opponents, there's got to be kids out there who are going into data and analytics that are like involved in swimming, are like, wait, I can do this in my sport. Where do you sign me up? And they're all going to be applying to USA Swimming for those types of jobs.
It's funny because growing up, I was like, I'd always ask kids when athletes as I'd coach them, especially for the first time or whatever, one of the things I like to know about them, because I just thought it helped me understand how they learn. And if I understand how they learn, then I'm going to have one more tool in my tool belt to communicate whatever message I'm trying to communicate to them. So I always ask, hey, are you numbers or letters? Would you rather go to math class or science class and work on some equation and this kind of stuff? Or are you letters? Would you rather hear both sides of an argument and take one of those sides, or write a history paper or whatever? I was not numbers growing up as a kid at all. I was definitely more give me a point and counterpoint and I'll argue one. That part I enjoyed. So as I evolved in coaching, I realized, wow, this, it may sound duh, but this sport is all about the numbers. And there's so many key important ones. So sometimes my practice sessions started to mirror school a little bit, where I really was focusing on the data. And that was one of the cool things about going on those trips on really, sitting down with like Russell Mark and getting to really break down the data and the statistics on a particular swim and all the metrics on how it impacted it. I was able to bring that home and teach it to the people who I was working with. And it really helps, if you, I'm always like, know your numbers. But yeah, it is a data-driven sport that we're in. And it's a data-driven world now that we're in. I mean, I'm sure you have, on this podcast, there are metrics you'll evaluate on how you're doing and where you can improve and blah, blah, and what's killing it and what you probably won't do again and blah, blah, blah. The numbers will tell you.
Yeah, that's actually, I haven't really looked at it too much because we haven't had a whole lot of episodes premiere just yet. My sons are both have media backgrounds. My older son is going into broadcast journalism.
Cool.
So he understands how ratings affect and things along those lines. The only thing I've really looked at with the analytics is like the people who have already been on have asked, so how many times have people listened to my podcast? And they're turning it into a competition amongst each other. Like, well, I'm going to send these out to my athletes so that I make sure that I get the most. Like, you do you. Right. If you get me more listens, that's great. I'm not out here trying to make a buck. I'm just trying to talk swimming. But I have found that the older I've gotten, the more about the data and the analytics I have gotten into. I've always been good with Excel and spreadsheets. So that's been something that I've been able to take into the sport. But being at a college and having limited resources in terms of scholarships, it's very interesting that I think Peter Lynn at Eastern Michigan is the first time I really heard about it, where he kind of moneyballed swimming before it was a thing, where he was like, okay, this is your potential point value. So this is your dollar worth. So, and he was able to fluctuate that, and that's how he based his recruiting. And I've kind of done something very similar here at Cumberland's. I've had coaches ask me, like, how do you manage this? Are you able to work with your limited amount? And I show them my scientifically, and I put that in the biggest air quotes possible, driven matrix, and just little things with data. We're always analyzing test set results versus heart rate. One of the big tests that I do is the pulse plot, which Dave Salo put in his book many years ago to measure speed versus your heart rate and graph it, and train whether you're overtraining or if you're having a training shift. I was just talking to a good coaching friend of mine because we both have similarities in our coaching, and we use that metric. And it's honestly one of the more accurate things I've ever found, as long as your kids know how to count their own heart rates. That tends to be an issue sometimes. Yeah, that'll frustrate me in the fall when we get back to it. But I think it's really important that we've always judged swimming on time, and we know who the best is because you're the fastest. It's not like football or baseball. Well, baseball, not so much, but basketball or football or soccer. It's somebody's opinion who's the starting forward or starting left guard or number 2 wide receiver. I think it's really important that we are in a position that we're able to use the data, gather the data, and use the data appropriately.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things that I think is fascinating about your career as a coach is you pretty much have touched every aspect of the coaching world. You've been a club coach, you've coached high school, you've coached college. Now you're working with masters. I'm assuming there was probably a summer league in there somewhere too at some point. So you've hit all 5 of the major points that I look at. Based on all of the experience that you have, what are some things that, talking about all 5 of them, we'll go in order. Let's talk about summer league and then club, high school, college, and now masters. Tell me something about each one of those experiences that you took away as a huge positive and kind of help form your coaching. Let's talk about whatever summer league experience you've had.
Well, the summer league coaching I did, it just reinforced the whole notion to me that, man, coaching's fun. This is fun. Once I graduated North Carolina, I was lucky enough. I'm originally from Philadelphia, and I was lucky enough to get into Villanova Law School. And I'd been on the kind of 5-year plan there. So I'd been working with a brand new club team because the North Carolina Aquatic Club as an assistant, and with the college team as well. Just do something as a 5th year, right? It was, but what summer league showed me and what reinforced it then once I started doing it at North Carolina was, man, coaching's fun. This is fun. I'm not the kind of guy to sit for long periods. I now realize just how as I get older, I realize just how ADD I am. So coaching's a great outlet for that because at a practice, there's always something going on. Dealing with the little kids, it was awesome, and it reinforced to me that because there was times. I mean, I'll be honest. So I grew up swimming for Dick Schulberg, and I love Mr. Schulberg, and I wouldn't have changed my experience at growing up at Germantown Academy for anything in the world. But man, there were days there where I was like, this is no fun. I mean, the first time he ever made us do it, and not only did we do the 20,000, he told us the day beforehand that we were going to do it the next day, and we were on a training trip, so it's we could run away and hide and not do it. So you had a whole 24 hours of just dread beforehand. Sometimes it wasn't fun there, and sometimes it was you got a little cranky and just tired and burnt. I remember because so my experience was my junior in high school. Sophomore and junior in high school, I got real good real fast. I went from not having junior nationals to getting 10th at nationals in an 18-month time frame. So I remember coming back from my first nationals where I got 10th in the 1,000. I had an awesome experience. I saw all these people who I just read about in swimming world. That's the only access I had to them. I saw Mission Viejo, and I saw a fast Florida aquatic swim team and all these Olympians and stuff. And that was all cool and good. And I'd worked my tail off that year. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if I can do that again. Right. So I was very ready. Once I graduated and stopped swimming, I was very ready to put swimming in the back, in the rear view mirror in my life. But then, I coached local summer league in Chapel Hill, and it just refreshed and reminded me of just how fun coaching is.
Now, taken away from it, you had a very successful stint with Baylor, with the high school. What are some positives you took away from the high school coaching experience?
High school experience was awesome. And Baylor's a unique situation in that. So throughout when I coached college, I always had my interest and involvement involved in the club team out of that university. I was always a coach, whether I was the head coach or an assistant coach, or I ran a group or whatever. I like coaching high school kid that age, that call it senior in club swimming. I'm 58. I feel like I'm a remarkably young at heart 58-year-old. And it's because of that experience. But I would say about what Baylor was like coaching a college team with younger people. But I want to write something or come up with something, because I've been coaching for a long time, been part of a staff that won NCAAs. My club teams had won junior nationals and stuff. I'd done some stuff in the sport, and there was so much stuff when I got to being a high school coach that I didn't know or didn't realize, and I had so many epiphanies. I kind of want to do a thing where, at some level, on hey, some things that you never thought about but are really important for high school swimming, because it is a different competition. And it's, when you go to your high school championship meet, there's all kinds of ways they break them up, but it's very different than like a 3-day sectional club meet. It's completely different. So high school kid swimming and all that, without question, kept me young.
I think the big one with high school, and I had Todd Larkin on at St. Xavier in Louisville not too long ago, and he and I talked about it, is the order of events from state to state. Well, it's the same across the board, but how they break it up. Like where I grew up in Ohio, we swam the 200 medley relay through the 100 fly, and that was day one. And then day two was the 100 free through the 4 free relay. But in Indiana, where I coached, they did prelims of all the events, and then the next day they did the finals. And also their sectionals prelims were on Thursday, finals were on Saturday. And I think Illinois does something similar in that everything's all on one day. There's sectionals, but then prelims, finals at state. It's crazy across the board how high school organized it. And I think high school swimming brings apart something very special, in that it's the true team environment. Coaching at college, our dual meets are designed to break up the monotony of training. That's it. And although anymore, I see more coaches putting an emphasis on dual meets. When you see Leon Marchand break the national record in a dual meet against Cal, of all people. I'm sure Dave Durden really loved that. He got his revenge at nationals, however. But you don't see an emphasis on the dual meets, because the scoring is so whacked. You've got 9, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you can win and get fifth place, and you win the event 10-9. And relays are 11, 4, 2. Whereas at the high school level, you've got 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. Your depth comes into fray. And I love that. I wish we had that at the college level, because I've had friends who've said, if you didn't have the studs that you had, I'm beating you in a dual meet because I had better depth. And they did beat me at a conference meet, or they beat us at a nationals. And that's fair. But at the same time, it's like, I'll take advantage of the system while I got it. But I think high school swimming, the energy that comes up on it is so amazing. And I think that's something that a lot of our international kids have to learn, but it's something that the kids who only swim club, when they go off to college, they're missing out on that. They've got to learn what it means to be a part of that team environment. And I've always
you're spot on. Yeah, you are spot on that. It's funny you talk about the scoring system. One of the things I quickly learned was that, we'd have dual meets, and we were able to swim some good teams. We swam the team from Louisville, St. Xavier, one year. And it became, I figured out quickly that really, 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 really slow beats empty every time. There were times the cupboard was incredibly bare when I got to Baylor, especially on the boys' side. We weren't close to having a roster to fill out whole dual meet teams. So I my first year, I was recruiting kids in the dorm, being like, "Hey, any of you guys ever swim summer league? Can you do anything? Can you do the breaststroke and touch with two hands? Right? Can you do that? Because believe it or not, that's going to have a big impact in the final score of the competition." Yes, it's such a spirited, and they're at a time in their life where they will really, it's their first time where they're really going to lay it out for somebody else. And it's not that they don't do it in college swimming, but this is usually the first exposure to it in their lives. And it's amazing. It's amazing to watch. Greg Troy told me he brought up a good thing because he had his background at bowls and everything, so he'd been a high school coach, and it was funny. He said to me, so if he could ever, he always looked at it almost as a successful year if he could get a freshman to kind of replicate what they did if they were a real high level high schooler at the NCAAs, because he said, hey, it's in the prelims at NCAAs, because he said, hey, prelims at NCAAs, when you're having to lay everything on the line to try and make it back somewhere, some way, somehow, is way different than when you're at your high school state meet and you're the biggest fish on that pool deck and you're going to win every race by a ton. It's a totally, the distances are the same, but the actual races themselves are completely different. So I always thought that was pretty cool. But yes, that's really a fun part. And that, I'll tie that into being on the national team stuff. That's a big, what I really struck me with, especially with the national junior team being mainly high school age kids, the spirit and swimming for your country and putting that little extra zest in it was just phenomenal for them. So in a way, it reminded me of that zest and esprit de corps you get in a high school meet.
I know growing up in Ohio, high school swimming is massive. And I know there's a lot of states where it's really not as important. And
yes,
obviously you're in Tennessee, and yes, they have a high school state championships, but it's not even sanctioned by the state governing body like it was for us in
correct.
Ohio. And I've always found that extremely bizarre. And in Kentucky, most of the high school swimmers who are really good are club swimmers, and they stay mostly with their club teams because the rules allow it. And whereas in Ohio, we weren't allowed. You were with your high school teams, you trained with them, and then you went off with your clubs afterwards. And I think that brought together a sense of camaraderie and excitement and selflessness, that you are doing this for the win. You're doing this for me, it was Glen Oak High School, and we wanted to go undefeated my junior year. We did so. We wanted to repeat that my senior year. Unfortunately, we lost to a very talented Akron Firestone team, but we went on and beat them at our sectional or our region. And it was the energy that you bring with that. And again, we try to instill that at the college level. I don't know that there's enough emphasis on the dual meets that there should be. Obviously, there's some, like Florida, Georgia. I'm imagining that one's just nuts. Right now, North Carolina State, I don't care what sport it is. They could be underwater basket weaving. Those two schools are going to go at each other just because of the rivalry. Stanford, Cal. But for the most part, for smaller colleges like myself, we've had to make up rivalries. I don't want to say it because,
right,
but you have to find that team that you match up really well with, and you want to win. I still do scouting reports, and I give them to whether we're going to win or not. I still give my athletes, okay, this is where their strengths are. This is where we need to attack. And like you said, really slow is better than none at all. I could truly say that because we almost beat a mid-major Division I program while I was here at Cumberland's with my women's team. I won't say who it was because the next year they completely destroyed me as revenge. But I literally told my girl, who was our 1,500 freestyle, and she won both events, and she's from the Nashville area. She swam for XL Aquatics. I told Grace, I said, look, you're doing the 200 breaststroke. And she's like, Coach, why? And I go, because I have no depth in that, and you're good enough to get 5th place, and you're not going to be on the 200 free relay. And she said, okay. Turned out she got 4th, and she's like, Coach, my legs are dead from the 500. And I go, did you finish legally? Yes. Then that's all the good. And we almost won, almost pulled it out. But again, it's that willingness to do whatever it takes mentality to win. And that's how important the dual meets are. I would love to see some changes to the formats at the collegiate level. I know with some coaches, we play with formats. When I swam Asbury University, we do the triple distance meet, which is similar to what Stanford and Cal do. The one thing I always wanted to do is what Akron and Duquesne did, where they basically put 3 people in an event and then you pulled the event out of a hat. So you didn't know you could have a distance swimmer, a breaststroker, and a butterflyer, and you could pull out the 200 backstroke, and you didn't know. But the head coach balked on that one. I've always called him a little bit of a coward for that. But, it's just to make it interesting, because our dual meets sometimes they get boring with the same 16 event lineup. And I hope more coaches are able to be a little more creative. And I'd like to see us kind of change things up on a national level. I don't think that's going to happen, but You never know.
You never know.
Moving on, and this is the big area I wanted to talk with you about. Now you're the master's coach there at the YMCA of Metropolitan Chattanooga. Talk to me about developing a master's program, because just like when you deal with age group kids, I'd say like 9 to 10, 11, 12, you've got varying skill levels. You're going to have that even more so from what my perspective in master's programs, because I have adults, yes, they have a competitive background, but they may have not done it in 15 years. You've got the triathletes who are doing it just to stay in shape so they can get to the bike and the run. And then you've got the people that just want the good exercise and may not have the competitive background. Talk to me about when you're developing your programs and you're putting together your workouts, what are the things that you take a look at and you keep in mind when working with these?
It goes back. It's like coaching summer league a lot, honestly. First of all, I love it. I didn't, it was kind of the one, like you said, the last horizon on the sport for me to tackle. I absolutely love it, though. What I love about it is they don't have to be there. They don't have to be there. And our practices, we practice at 6 before work, and then we got a lunchtime crew where people are hustling in. So it's been fun. It's pretty much a new program. It'd been kind of puttering on there, but it really wasn't certainly anything formal or with any structure. And that's what I'm really enjoying kind of giving it. We've got a web page now, and we've got an Instagram page and all that stuff. But you do have they do come from the 3 buckets that you described as to why they're there. And that is, and that's what I always try and figure out at first. I just ask them, it's great. Hey, what's your reason? What's your motive? What's your goal? What are you trying to do here? So our situation is very free flowing. I tell all of them every day that, remember, if you want to use different equipment or anything on this set, here's the basic structure of it. But if you want to throw on fins, That's fine. It's all good. So it's been a blast. You do have, people who swam in college, and it's kind of cool. Within the past 2 weeks, I've gotten some of the old kids who are back in town who I used to coach at Baylor be like, "Hey, coach, I hear you're at the Y running a master's program. Tell me about it." They're trying to see if they can fit it in their schedule and all this. So that you have people like that. And then, I've got people who have never, what's a flip turn? I realized like the second practice, okay, I was taking copious, notes in my head, and then I transfer them when I got home of, okay, got to describe to someone what the difference between a length and a lap is, because they don't know. I was so psyched the other day. I was like, man, we had 4 lanes going with 4 people swimming circles, understanding the intervals, knowing what was up, going 10 apart. It looked like a practice. I told the group the other day, I was like, that is the most competent swimming I've seen. It's awesome since I've been back. But it's funny. I can remember Greg Troy, again, I talk with Greg a bunch, and he told me a long time ago, he was like, hey, you want to find out if you really love this sport, go coach Learn to Swim or go coach Masters. And so it's validated that I do indeed love it. It's so much fun. Their sense of pride and achievement is so genuine. And when they thank you, and they're not kidding, they're genuinely grateful for the experience of that. And the nice thing is, as I'm kind of bringing them along, is a lot of them don't know any better. So they don't realize that, okay, what I just gave them is probably a significant step up in tax bracket here, but let's see if they can do this. And they're very in tune, and they're so glad to be taught the stroke, because so many of them don't have a point of reference to it. And I've gotten, some of them are kind of shy about expanding their swimming and going into different strokes and this kind of that. But as it goes on and they start to see that they're getting a lot better, they're more open to those experiences, which is so cool to see. And back to our previous conversation about numbers, some of them I'm really starting to introduce stroke count metrics and this and that. And they're like, really, you count our strokes? And I'm like, I do. Yes, that is way I evaluate your swimming. Yes. In general, less is better until it comes to a point where you're just going too slow. So it's a blast, and it's I learn something new every day. It's definitely made me a better coach, because some of them I do work. So we just had the Chattanooga half Ironman. It apparently was the largest Ironman since the pandemic, over 3,000 participants. And so I was working with a lot of triathletes, and if they're there to improve on their swimming because it's their weak leg, and most of them are leg heavy and they don't have a lot of flexibility. So it's just trying to teach them how to move through the water better, and understand what's really important, and try not to wear themselves out in the beginning. It's been a ton of fun, and it's made me a much better coach, because I've had to reinvent on how I communicate things. And again, giving me more tools in my toolbox.
One of the things that I noticed talking with a few masters coaches, again, like I mentioned, I've covered a couple practices and stood there just like a basic assistant coach staring at the sheet. I think the thing that I've noticed the most working with the master swimmers, or talking with coaches, the master swimmers, like you brought up, they want to be coached and they are coachable. And I think other than 8 and unders and 9 and 10s when you get to master swimming, there's a small window in there. And unfortunately, I'm smack in the middle of it with the college age athlete that I'm not saying all of my athletes are this way, but some of them you can work with, you can get them to change their freestyle, spend an entire practice dedicated solely on them. And the very next day they develop some form of amnesia. Whereas you get master swimmers that you talk to them about hand placement or high elbow or their recovery or stroke count or things like that. And you can watch the process go through their mind every time they swim. They're very deliberate in what they're doing, because they know once they get that down, it's going to improve their overall training. It's the triathletes who are the ones that, and I've been asked numerous times to help with coach triathletes for swimming, because we have a good contingent of cyclists and runners here in Eastern Kentucky. So the triathletes are talking about all the time.
Totally.
You're right. They are so leg driven because of the cycling. And I'm an avid cyclist. I love riding my bike, but I was also a former miler. So my legs didn't do anything but drag behind me till like the last 200. And I was a 200 flyer, so I had that going for me a little bit off the walls, but they are so leg driven that they feel like they've got to burn those legs. And you're like, no. The arms are not going to do anything. If you're in an Ironman for 120 miles, they're going to sit there and change gears. So use them to your advantage. Understand the connectivity of the stroke between the arms and the legs, using that core to rotate and along your longitudinal axis. And you talk to them about these things, and they're a lot more cerebral. They really,
yes, 100%.
They look at you and they say, okay, I need to make these changes. It's going to make my swim more efficient, which means I'm going to use less energy, which means I'm going to have more for that marathon at the end of my bike ride. Anytime I ever did a triathlon, I was the swimmer. I was in a team. That was it. That was my role. I had no problem with that.
Same.
I was a decent cyclist. I'm a better cyclist now because I understand things more. I was never a great runner. Anything over 800 meters in track, I was done. I was toast. I would do 5Ks just because my coaches made me. But I think when you're dealing with triathletes and former competitive swimmers, they want to be more efficient, because let's face it, we weigh a little bit heavier than we did when we were in college. Yeah. We need to be more efficient. And especially for the people that they weren't competitive swimmers, that this wasn't their universe and they just love it because it's good exercise, they want to be as efficient as they can. And the other thing I was told by a master's coach, and this is something I didn't realize, and I incorporated it more in my training, even with my college kids, less and less on time intervals, more and more on rest intervals and heart rate intervals, because we're not going to hold 110s like we used to. There's no way around it. And you're not, the problem with former competitive swimmers is they always measure themselves against what they used to be. And you've got to change that mindset, but a lot more based on, okay, we're going to do these, we're doing some 200s, but we're going to do them on 30 seconds rest. We want your heart rate in a certain zone. I've incorporated that more with my training now collegiately because of talking with masters coaches, because that's what they're doing. Because you have people with heart conditions that have to be careful of things. And I think that's one of the coolest things of working with that group of athletes. That, and the fact that when Christmas rolls around, you don't get gift cards to Best Buy or something like that. You tend to get bottles of bourbon or whatever your favorite kind of wine is. I will say the master's coach where I was at in Valparaiso used to get the coolest Christmas presents that you definitely don't get from college kids. So
that's probably true. And the nice thing is most of them have a watch.
Yeah.
Most of it, they watch that watch. The triathletes definitely watch that watch. Understanding heart rate, etc. There, you can do it. I would say 80%, at least 80% of what I've given them so far has been on rest. And it's kept me on my toes. It's been such a wonderful experience. It's kept me on my toes because I've tried to really be in tune with and I take my little notes on my phone. All right, so when Johnny has his spins on, he can do about 1/16. He's pretty good at that, that's a workable, so I can start to build things off around that for him. And the other thing too is, it's very hard, and I get it. It's very hard to, you can't really have a hard line of practice starts at 6. Well, guess what? For some of them, it starts a little earlier because they, and one of the first things I ask them is, are you a hard out at 7:00? If we happen to go over a little bit, is that okay? Do you need this woman I coached this morning, her and her husband, they are 6:50, they are hard outs. So I gotta let them know when that is. The lunchtime group, people can get, it depends on their work and when they're getting there,
right.
So what I try and do is I have basically a general warm up that we do every day. And then I try and tell them, do your warm up. It's not going to change. You know what it's going to be each day. And then we can kind of consolidate everybody. If some of them have to do tack on a little bit more and try and get the main thing that we do, try and get as many together. Like it was a big deal when, again, it's a very new group. I want to say about 6 weeks ago, I was like, okay, I've got, and I do it at different sites too, which just makes it a little bit more challenging. But about 6 weeks ago, I'm like, okay, I've got 2 basic speed groups. And so I can, Johnny, Fred, Sally, you're on this one, Mark, Mary, and Jane, you're over here. And that allows us for the community, because I get it too, that they want to chit chat and have some fun while they're there. It's a nice release and escape for them out of their day. So I am very cognizant and supportive of that.
That was the one thing that I talked with a good coaching friend of mine who was on the West Coast. He'd coached college for many years. He'd coached club, and he was the head master's coach in the Bay Area. And he had hired a young coach who was right out of the high school age group mentality. And he's like, okay, he's my assistant master's coach. He's helping me on the deck. Second practice, he couldn't be there, the head coach. And he said, all right, you're going to run the show. And he went hardline on, okay, we're getting in at this time. And one of the master swimmers told the story to him. He was like, we really like Dave's energy, but he's really going to have to dial that down or somebody's going to punch him. It's just going to happen. Like we have jobs, we have families. And I think that young coach had to learn, like, hey, this isn't like they're on a college campus where you can say practices at 2, you will be there. This is, okay, they're coming from work. What's traffic life on the 405? Or are you dealing with what are you dealing with? So I think that it's really kind of a unique environment. And I know every master's coach I've ever talked to, whether it's at ASCA or I've just had the pleasure of getting to know, they've all said the same thing. It is enjoyable. It's something where they're still coaching, they're working, they're being analytical, but at the same time, there is more of a personal connection because the people that you're working with, relatively, they're your age. Like for me, I'm coaching 18 to 22-year-olds. I cannot relate to their music. Like when I start blaring my stuff, they call it the oldies music. And I'm like, it's from the 90s. And they go, oh, the late 1900s. And I just have to sit there and take it. It's so painful. But I think it's just amazing that you're building up a master's program there. It's something that, like I've told everybody, like at some point I'm either coaching age groupers or I think at this point I may go the master's route because I still want to stay involved in the sport whenever my time at Cumberland's is over. Or my time coaching collegiately is over. I don't know what the future holds, but it always sounds like it's a lot more fun just kind of being there and a little bit more loose. I don't know if that my OCD personality can take it, but that might be the actual best thing for it. Who knows? So
yeah. See, it helps my ADD because there's so much going on, and the way they swim is fascinating to me because it's for some of them it's not textbook.
Nope.
And it's kind of like one of the things I've been saying to him is like, okay, you just need some arthroscopic surgery here on your stroke. We don't need to do radical reconstruction. You've got the basics, and we can work with that. But it's fine, so we have a lot. It's really picking up the membership, and we got a lot of new people joining. Again, I asked them kind of why you're here and what's your swimming background. I was like, can you do all 4 strokes? And so some of them are like, nope, only do freestyle. I'm like, that's okay. And others are like, well, yeah, I swam in high school, so yeah, I could do it, etc. I was like, all right, sweet, but it's been a blast, and it's been, and that's why you got to live life, people, because you just never know what kind of experience is going to touch you in what way.
Absolutely.
And this has touched me in such a wonderful way.
Well, Coach, we've got our last segment before I get you out of here. We call it 650s on the top. Hey. So here we go. I give you 6 topics, 2 different items. You got to pick this or that. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. Crunchy or creamy peanut butter?
Crunchy.
400 IM or 200 fly? Which is the better event?
200 fly, because I can't do breaststroke.
Do you prefer to talk to people on the phone, or do you prefer texting?
It's starting to get I'm still phone still. Although texting is that's what we're talking about. but phone. We'll go phone.
Fly on a plane or take a train?
Fly on a plane, even though it's a hassle.
Would you rather ride a horse or ride a motorcycle?
Motorcycle.
And you're telling me you got ADD, so this one could be, I didn't know which way you're going to go, but I got to guess here. Are you more inclined to do a spontaneous trip, or do you have to plan out every detail leading into it?
Ooh, that's a hard one, because I like to do both. We'll go spontaneous. Because oftentimes they're more fun. Sometimes I overplan. I used to go see a lot of music back in the day. So like a lot of music. And
oop, I lost you.
Sorry about that.
Oh, hey, no worries. Well, I want to thank you so very much. We're just wrapping up here. For those of you listening at home right now, you can follow Coach on Instagram at coach.flack, Flack, on Instagram, or on Twitter at Flack Coach, and you can keep up with him with everything that's going on with the master's program at the Chattanooga YMCA. Again, Coach, I'd love to get you back on later down the road. I'm hoping to have a panel talking about master's swimming in general with several coaches. Whenever we get that set up, you're one of my first calls.
Awesome. That would be tremendous. It's been a wonderful learning experience, as was this podcast today. This was tremendous. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. You have a good one.
All right. Thanks. You too.